Welcome to the South Australian Drought Hub podcast, strengthening drought resilience for our farmers and regional communities.
Make a plan and stick with the decisions it requires. G'day, I'm Drew Radford, and that probably sounds obvious, but surprisingly, it's not a formal process on many farms. Indeed, a recent survey showed that only 38% of farms have documented plans. It's also a crucial process for Todd Woodard from Peel Pastoral. It's part of his approach in managing climate variability on his grazing enterprise at Wrattonbully in South Australia's southeast. To discuss this and what else he does to mitigate dry seasons and also increase their resilience to them, Todd joins us for this SA Drought Hub podcast. Todd, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Drew. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Todd, tell me about Peel Pastoral.
So Peel Pastoral is a family-owned and operated grazing business. We've been here for 25 years now. We came to here as a family. We hadn't been in business together for a long time, but we decided to pull some capital together again and moved into this area and sort of been able to grow the business over the last 25 years. It's a grazing operation, as I said, self-replacing Angus cows, about 1,000 of those, and maybe another 400 followers behind them, and then about 4,000 composite ewes running alongside those.
Todd, you've grown that quite considerably over that 20-odd years, though, haven't you?
It was 2,300 acres when we first moved here. We own and lease now, well, we operate about 8,000 acres down this way now.
You've had quite a broad experience working on stations as well, so I imagine that's given you quite an insight to working in different climates.
Yeah, I think it probably has now you mention it. I probably don't think of it day to day, but I've worked in Western Australia and back here through the Coorong country of South Australia, and then spent 6 years over in New South Wales at Hay and managed grazing and cropping stations there. So yeah, you get a feel for different areas and what makes them tick.
So what are seasons generally like in your part of the world, and also has drought been much of a factor in that?
Drought's probably not a word we use down here so much. So, having that perspective of New South Wales where you can have prolonged year-to-year droughts, we don't seem to get that here. We may have a failed season, maybe the start of a season or the end of a season, a failed spring or something like that. They can be just as financially severe on your business, but they're not generally year to year. They sort of recover, and you might get 2 years of dry times back to back, but then it pulls itself out. It's a pretty safe country really, but you can have these hiccups along the way.
In regards to those hiccups then, Todd, what strategies have you put in place to reduce the exposure of your business to those dry times?
We've got a few things. Like one thing is we're always trying to match our stocking rate to our carrying capacity. So how many stock on the farm related to how much feed we've got in front of us. And carrying capacity is a function of rainfall really. So we've got some tools in around that measure rainfall and give us some sort of predictions around that. So some general strategies we employ are we try and keep around about that 20 to 25% of our DSEs as dry stock or trading stock. And this allows us to, if we come into a dry period, we can quit those really quickly and spread our breeders out over a larger area and decrease our stocking rate per acre and try and get through that way. We always try and maintain really good ground cover, so we don't, bare country out. We need the ground cover. It holds more moisture in our soils. It keeps our biology alive in our soils. And we've got a little saying about you have to love your grass and therefore your soil more than you love your livestock. And that sort of just keeps things in perspective a bit more for you. We all love livestock, that's why we do it, but without grass and soils, our livestock just aren't going to be here, and we're going to really run down our system and our environment that we're working in. We use perennials. They're deeper rooted. They can source moisture deeper down. And also, if it comes dry and then you do get a sort of a rain event, well, your perennials will grow anyway, whereas your annuals are sort of usually shut down and died. Another really thing I see that helps us is matching our breeding cycles to our pasture growth curve. So we're trying to work with nature a bit more there. So for us, we have a key date around the first week in August where we think our spring starts, and historically, we can see our pasture growth curve starts to trend upwards. So all our breeding, our cows, our calf and our ewes lamb in that little 6-week window period before about the 1st of August. Therefore, we haven't got animals lambing, in autumn, which can be dry and taking up, more energy to get them through. So there's some general strategies that we use.
There's a lot of detail that goes behind those as well, though, Todd, because I was reading a bit of background on your property, and end of winter's pretty busy. You define, actually, there's a planning day there that you reckon's the most important day on your property each year.
In another document we have a policies and procedures document for dry time. So just identifying some key dates, it might even be the other end of the season, maybe around the end of April. It hasn't rained and it doesn't look like raining. You're looking at long range forecasts at 7 to 14 days and it doesn't look like rain. Well, you're not going to hit your targets of dry matter in the paddock at lambing and that sort of thing. So you've got to start making some decisions around that. And then similarly at the end of your growing season too, you've got to make sure you've got feed for all your residual animals, your breeding cows and your breeding ewes, to get them through to the start of your next growing season. So for us, it dictates when we sell our surplus stock. So for instance, if you have a tight finish, like an early finish to your growing season, you're sitting on less kilograms of dry matter than what you'd hoped, well then it's a trigger point to say we better get these lambs and calves off the farm earlier than what we probably would have. Don't worry about hitting weight targets, just sell them as stores and they'll make good money and just free up that feed for those cows and ewes later on.
The other thing I get from this process that you've got in place from your policies and procedures, Todd, is I get the impression it takes some of the stress out of it, i.e. these are the decision points and we're going to stick with it from here on in.
Oh, Drew, that's 100%. I've been in situations, and that's why we've designed these tools to help us, where you get in a real funk. If you haven't made a decision and you're hoping it's going to rain and it's not raining and it's really hard, you spiral down and it's really hard to make clear decisions. So to have a policies and procedures manual that you can flip out at, you get your key date, can't remember what I wrote there, you can pull it out and go through it and start acting on a few things. And it's amazing once you start doing that, how your clarity comes back and you can make good decisions early, and early decisions are always best, right or wrong. If you sell stock and it rains 2 weeks later, it doesn't matter. It gives you an opportunity to trade some other stock through there or just sit for a bit or, whatever. So I think it's really, really important mentally to make those early decisions.
I think that's a great insight, and it sounds quite empowering from your perspective. You spoke a while ago at an SA Drought Hub regional consultation workshop in Narracourt. What are your thoughts on initiatives like Drought Hub?
I think they're really good. I come from a prevention point of view rather than trying to have a government handout or something like that when you're in it. I think there's, some real tools out there so people can help themselves before they get into that situation. There is a lot of, anxiety in farming communities and stuff, and it's a lot around not sort of being able to make these decisions quick enough. So, I think it's some real benefit to it. And there are training courses and people doing things and helping people put these things into place. So there's lots of help out there. So I think it's great from that point of view.
Todd, are you planning any new strategies or initiatives to help further build resilience in the coming years?
Yes and no. I mean, we're always reviewing our policies and procedures. So you don't just write one up and put it in the filing cabinet and leave it there. Bring it out. And it's best to do it when you're like now, when everything's, middle of winter and there's grass and it's raining. And that sort of gives you more clarity as well when you're doing it, not actually in a stressful time. So not specifically. I think we will continue those amount of DSEs as dries and that sort of thing, and we're always looking for opportunities to carry a few more of those. And I think it's just about sharpening up some of the tools. We use some software that helps us around feed budgeting. So we not only get out and physically cut some quadrants and that sort of give us a bit of a guess over the whole farm, but we actually run some software alongside that as well. And that's got a predictive tool to it as well, and an analytical tool. We're sort of 2 years into that, and we're starting to get some really good data now. So we're excited. That's one thing that we're improving on, and then we're excited to see where that takes us.
You remind me, Todd, of a term that I heard, use the good times to plan for the bad times.
Yeah.
And it seems to be pretty true in your case. You're focusing forward, not hoping that they're going to happen, obviously. So out of all of this, Todd, what would the key piece of takeaway information or advice you'd give to other livestock producers?
I think exactly what you said just then, Drew. Have some planning in around those dry times, and have a strategy already in place, drawn up, that you can just pull out and start acting on. And even just doing some little things early just makes such a difference. And even if it's just selling some stock and buying some fodder in, generally if you do it early, the market hasn't tipped. If it's a widespread dry time, usually people hang on, and then as soon as the market starts falling, like it's a natural market, everyone starts putting stock into that market, and it just brings that price down quicker. So if you can be early, you'll get a better price. You'll be buying fodder at a lower price before everyone else sort of thinks about it. So yeah, I think have a plan and use it early, act on it early.
That's great advice. Todd Woodard from Peel Pastoral, thank you for taking the time and sharing your insights with us for this SA Drought Hub podcast.
Terrific. Thanks, Drew. Enjoy the chat.
And that concludes this podcast. You'll find more podcasts on the SA Drought Hub website at sadroughthub.com.au. The South Australian Drought Resilience Adoption and Innovation Hub is one of 8 hubs established across the nation through the Australian Government's Future Drought Fund. The SA Drought Hub is an exciting initiative which brings together a dynamic network of primary producers, industry groups, researchers, government agencies, universities, agribusinesses, farming systems groups, traditional owners and others to work towards a common vision to strengthen the drought resilience and preparedness of farms and regional communities in SA. Led by the University of Adelaide in partnership with the Department of Primary Industries and Regions South Australia, the Hub is responsible for driving the extension of existing knowledge and practices to build drought resilience in primary production systems.